"We already sold your house," my daughter laughed, and the sound of it split the kitchen like glass hitting concrete. I was standing by the window, polishing the same frame that had held her graduation photo for 23 years. The light hit her smile in that picture just right, before she learned how to weaponize it. Now that same smile stood across from me, sharp as a blade. The room went quiet enough to hear the clock's nervous tick. The same clock her daddy hung the year we bought this house. The house she just said was gone. My hand froze on the rag. Lemon oil dripped onto the counter, one drop at a time, like the sound of time running out. "Sold?" I asked. The word scraped its way out of my throat. She nodded, twirling her phone like victory. "Yeah, Mama, we got a good deal. You'll thank me later. It's time to downsize." Downsize. That word hit harder than a slap. Outside, the magnolia tree was still heavy with blossoms. The smell of spring had no idea betrayal was in the air. Even the birds on the fence line stopped singing, like they were waiting to see what I'd do. I set the frame down slow. My fingers trembled, not from age, but restraint. "Who gave you permission?" I asked. She laughed again, nervous but bold. "Technically, the paperwork was in both our names after Daddy passed, remember? We just took care of the rest." We. That word burned. We. Her and that husband of hers. That man who calls me Miss Helen, like respect costs him extra. I walked over to the stove, turned off the pot of collard greens that had been simmering since morning. The smell of vinegar and spice filled the silence between us. "Did you even think to tell me before?" I said, my voice calm, too calm. "Mama, you don't need all this space. You can stay with us for a while, or we'll get you a little condo near the lake. Something easier." She said easier, the same way folks say out of the way. I sat down at the table where I'd fed her for 18 years, the same table her daddy built from oak planks he cut himself. I ran my hand over the grain, deep, stubborn, unbending. She avoided my eyes now. "We already closed the deal, Mama. Papers signed. It's done." I smiled then, a small, dangerous smile. "You sold it, huh?" "Mm-hmm." She shifted. "Money's already transferred. We just need you to pack up by next week." Next week. The house her father died building. The house I refinanced twice to put her through college. The house where every Sunday the smell of cornbread meant home, not eviction. The clock ticked louder now. Her phone buzzed. A text from her husband. She read it, smiled again. He was waiting outside. "Okay, Mama, don't be mad. This is just a new chapter." I stood up slow. My knees may be old, but they still remember how to hold power. "A new chapter," I repeated, walking toward her. She flinched when I took the frame from the counter and held it out. "Keep this," I said. "You might want to remember who taught you to read." Her face twisted. "You always got to make it dramatic." I stepped close enough for her perfume to mix with the lemon oil still hanging in the air. "You think you wrote me out the story," I whispered. "But baby, I own the page." When she left, the house sighed like it finally understood the cost of love. I walked through each room, touching the walls like they were old friends, the hallway with its faded photos, the living room with the chair her daddy never let anyone else sit in, the floorboard near the kitchen that always creaked, no matter how many times we fixed it. I ended up in the back room, the one nobody else knew about. Behind the dresser, behind the curtain, was a small gray lockbox. Inside, the real deed. Because see, when her daddy and I refinanced, I paid that last balance myself. And when he died, I had the title reissued, quietly, in my name only. She never checked the updated file, never looked past the copy the lawyer mailed her 12 years ago. People love paperwork until it turns on them. I pulled out the manila envelope and ran my thumb across the embossed seal. There it was, my name, Helen Price. Not shared, not co-owned. Mine. I smiled, slow and steady, as the truth settled like a warm coat over my shoulders. They thought they sold my house. But the only thing they signed was a dream they didn't own. That night, I called my lawyer, Mr. Dillard, old friend of my husband's, still sharp as a tack. "Dillard Law Office," his assistant answered. "Tell him it's Helen Price," I said, "and tell him the birds done tried to sell the nest." He picked up fast. "Helen, what's wrong?" "Nothing wrong, baby," I said, smiling at the clock. "Just need to remind a few folks who built the roof they sleeping under." He chuckled low. "You got the papers?" "Every last one. Then sit tight. Let 'em hang themselves with their own rope." Morning light came soft through the curtains, painting gold stripes across the floor. I brewed coffee in the same percolator from 1979. The smell of roasted beans and justice filled the kitchen. A car door slammed outside. Her husband's voice, deep, impatient. "Mrs. Price, we need to talk." I opened the door slow. "Morning, Derek." He adjusted his tie like he thought it could make him respectable. "Mama Helen, this ain't personal, okay? It's business." I leaned against the doorframe. "Then it's funny," I said, "how business always seems to start after love dies." He frowned. "Look, the sale's final. We'll handle the lease transfer next week, all right?" "The lease?" I asked. "Oh, you mean the one I own?" His confusion was instant. "What? That house y'all renting from?" I smiled. "The one you two so proud of? Guess whose name's on that? Deed too." He blinked. "You're lying." "Check the county records, baby. I'll wait." He didn't move. "See, when y'all couldn't get approved last year, who you think co-signed? You just didn't notice whose name was at the top." He started to stammer something, but I cut him off with a soft hum, the same gospel tune I used to sing while paying their bills. "You tried to sell the house I built," I said, "but I own the roof you livin' under." I turned back inside, left the door open just enough for my words to linger in the morning air like incense. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Some betrayals don't need revenge. They collapse under the weight of their own arrogance." But still, I wasn't done. Because sometimes you don't just teach lessons, you engrave them. By Monday morning, the air had that heavy silence, the kind that comes before a storm or a reckoning. The phone rang at 9:07 a.m., sharp. It was my daughter. "Mama, we need to talk," she said. Her tone was different this time, flat, cautious, rehearsed. I could hear her husband whispering in the background like he thought I couldn't tell. "Then talk," I said, stirring my coffee. The spoon clinked against the cup in a rhythm older than her marriage. "We checked the deed. There must be some kind of mistake. The lawyer said—" I cut her off. "Baby, you don't fix truth with paperwork." Silence, the kind that tastes like guilt. "Mama, are you trying to ruin us?" she asked finally. I smiled into the steam. "No, sugar. You did that yourself. I'm just here to witness it." Outside, a moving truck rumbled down the street. Not mine. They were moving in 2 doors down, a young couple laughing, boxes full of new beginnings. It made me remember what hope used to sound like. I stood at the window, sipping coffee, thinking about how every betrayal begins with good intentions and ends with signatures. I'd seen this pattern my whole life. Kindness mistaken for blindness, generosity mistaken for weakness. People think old women don't watch, but I've seen more from the kitchen window than most folks see on TV. At noon, I went downtown. The courthouse smelled the same as it always had: disinfectant, dust, and desperation. The clerk behind the glass barely looked up when I said my name. "Helen Price," I said. "Need to verify a couple property records." She typed, squinted, and said, "You own—" "Quite a few, ma'am." I smiled, just enough to keep my peace quiet. See, after my husband died, I used part of his insurance money to buy small rental houses around the county. Little ones. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, porch swing, peeling paint, all leased to families who needed a start. One of them, 3 years ago, had been rented to Derek and my daughter. They needed a place while getting on their feet. And like any good mother, I helped. I just made sure my help had paperwork. On my way out, I passed through the old records room. the one with the high windows and crooked fans. Something about it always felt like church. Rows and rows of files, people's lives reduced to ink and signatures. As I ran my finger down the spine of one binder, I whispered, "Paper don't lie, baby. People do." That evening, I baked cornbread, because no matter how bad a day gets, butter and heat still make sense. The smell filled the house, warm, alive, defiant. I was setting the pan on the counter when headlights swept across the kitchen wall. Then a knock. Hard, nervous, too late to be polite. It was them, both of them, standing on my porch like lost children dressed in guilt. "Mama," she started, "we didn't mean for it to go like this." "Go like what?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Like selling a house that wasn't yours? Or like finding out you living in one that is?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Mama, please. Don't cry now, baby," I said softly. "You laughed when you said, 'We sold your house.' Remember?" She covered her face. Derek just stood there, jaw tight, pride cracking like thin glass. "Let's make a deal," he said finally. "A deal?" I laughed. "Lord, I've been making deals my whole life, most of them with God. You sure you qualified?" He ignored the jab. "We'll pay you back for the house, every penny." I stepped closer. "Pay me back? You can't afford the rent without me waiving late fees. You don't even know the color of your own checkbook ink." He swallowed hard. The porch light flickered. A moth beat itself against the bulb, desperate for something that would burn it. "Mama, we're sorry," my daughter said. "We just thought—" "You thought old meant stupid," I said. "You thought love meant silence. You thought wrong." The wind picked up, rattling the magnolia branches overhead. I remembered something my husband once told her when she was 16 and lying through her teeth about a broken vase. "If you can't be honest with the ones who raised you, baby, the world gon' chew you up whole." And right now, the world had a mouth full of them. I sighed and looked out into the dark. "I ain't gonna evict you," I said finally. They both looked up, hope flickering in their eyes. "But," I continued, "you're gonna pay your dues proper. Rent's double starting next month, and you'll come by every Sunday for supper. No excuses. Family earns forgiveness by showing up." Her face twisted, half relief, half shame. He just nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me," I said, walking back inside. "Thank the woman I used to be. She's the only reason you still got a key." That night, I sat in my old rocking chair, listening to the crickets preach their little midnight hymns. The air was thick with jasmine and consequence. My Bible lay open on the table, the same one I'd highlighted every verse about truth and patience. I touched the page and whispered, "Lord, give me peace where revenge tries to bloom." Then, after a long pause, I added, "And let him feel just enough guilt to grow." The next morning, a letter came. White envelope, thick paper, expensive gilt. Inside, a bank draft. Partial payment for the property misunderstanding. I laughed out loud. It felt good. Laughter with backbone. I walked to the back room and placed that check inside the same gray lockbox as the deed, because sometimes poetic justice needs a receipt. That night, as I sat by the window, gospel radio low, I whispered to myself, "Kindness ain't weakness. It's just quiet until it strikes." And I smiled, because this war wasn't over. It was just getting beautiful. By Thursday, the whole neighborhood knew something had cracked inside that pretty little family my daughter built on borrowed bricks. The air outside was sticky, not just from the heat, but from whispers. At the grocery store, Mrs. Larkin from down the street leaned over her cart. "Heard your daughter movin' again, Helen?" I smiled. "Not yet, baby. She just learning where she lives." People love gossip, but gossip ain't nothing but free advertising when you're winning quiet. That evening, my phone rang again. "Mama, we need to talk. In person," she said. Her voice trembled the way wind does before a tornado. "Bring your husband," I said. "Truth travel better in pairs." They showed up an hour later. No laughter this time, just eyes that didn't know where to look. He had papers in his hand. Contracts, calculations, fear disguised as business. He started talking numbers, market value, liens, returns. I let him talk until his voice ran out of oxygen. Then I slid my own folder across the table. Original title, bank statement, lease agreement, all signed by me and notarized 2 years ago. The color drained from his face. "Mama, where'd you get this?" my daughter asked. "From the truth, baby," I said. "It don't hide when you ain't afraid to look." He leaned back, smirking like a cornered fox. "Fine, you got paperwork, but you ain't got the money to keep us out." I laughed. That deep southern laugh that rumbles from bones older than his ego. "Oh, you think money's what built this house? No, baby, it was discipline. And discipline don't foreclose." The way he blinked told me he didn't get it, and never would. I turned to my daughter. "When you sold this house, who did the buyer wire the money to?" She hesitated. "To the title company." "And the title company sent that money where?" "To an escrow account." Her voice faded. "In my name." I nodded. "Good. Then you're going to call that title company tomorrow and tell them they transferred funds for property fraud. Because see, once I turn this deed in to the county recorder, their buyer gonna lose every cent." The room fell silent. The clock ticked its slow amen. She started crying. "I messed up, Mama." "No, baby," I said, soft but sharp. "You forgot where your blessing came from. That's a different kind of sin." I handed her a napkin. "Clean your face. Tomorrow you go make it right. Then you gon' come back here Sunday and eat with me like we used to." She nodded. Derek stood up too fast. I could see his anger boiling under that cheap tie. "Come on," he snapped. "She can keep her damn house." When they left, the night was quiet again. That holy kind of quiet that follows truth. I sat back down and whispered, "They fed me lies, but I fed 'em consequences." The next day, Dillard called. "Morning, Helen. Seems the title company caught wind of your daughter's error. They want to settle before you file charges." I smiled. "Good. Tell them to donate the fees to the community shelter and put it in my husband's name." "You sure?" he asked. "I ain't looking for money," I said. "I want redemption to pay interest." That Sunday, my daughter showed up early for dinner. She brought sweet tea and silence. We sat at that oak table again, the same one she once tried to erase me from. "Did you fix it?" I asked. She nodded. "The buyer got his money back. The title's restored." "Good." Then we ate in peace for the first time in years. The air tasted like humility and butter. After a while, she looked up. "Mama, how did you learn to do all this?" I smiled. "Because I used to be the one getting played, and one day I decided to read the rules." When she left, I stood by the door and watched her walk to that rental she thought was hers. The porch light cast her shadow long across the yard, like a lesson stretching too far to escape. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, "Ever loved someone so hard you forgot yourself? Then one day you remember, and they call it revenge." That week, the house got too quiet. The kind of quiet that don't heal, just hums under your ribs like an old wound. The gospel station played low in the background, but even the choir sounded tired. Every chair, every photo frame, every plate in the cabinet had an echo of what used to be laughter. I wasn't lonely. I was remembering. There's a difference. Loneliness hurts. Remembering warns. I started walking the house at night, room to room, light to light. Every step had a memory, that scrape on the hallway wall, where she rode her tricycle too wide, that chipped tile by the pantry, where her daddy dropped the anniversary champagne, that window latch that never quite closed, like time refusing to seal. It was all still here. I just had to let it speak. By Friday, the guilt had found a voice. Hers. "Mama," she said on the phone, soft and brittle. "I've been thinking. I'm not proud of what we did." "You shouldn't be." I said, folding laundry. "But I'm glad you're thinking. That's how grown women start healing." She sniffled. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Baby," I said, "forgiveness ain't about deserving. It's about direction. You can't move forward dragging the corpse of yesterday." There was silence, then a sigh. "I miss you, Mama." "I've been right here," I said. "You just stop looking." After that call, I sat by the window again. Outside, the magnolia tree was dropping its petals, slow, graceful, unapologetic. I thought about how trees shed what no longer serves them and call it renewal. Maybe I was finally learning to do the same. Saturday morning, I went to church. Not the big one downtown, the small wooden one off Peach Street, the one where the pews still creak and the pastor still wipes his brow with the same handkerchief he's had since 1989. When I walked in, folks turned. They hadn't seen me in months, not since the incident, as they whispered it. I smiled, nodded, took my usual seat near the back. The choir started singing, "God Don't Make No Mistakes." And for the first time in a long time, I felt that line hit true. After service, Pastor Collins came over. "Miss Helen," he said, smiling, "we missed you." "I've been busy learning peace," I said. He chuckled. "Peace is expensive." "Worth every penny," I replied. He leaned closer. "You look lighter." "I let go of something heavy," I said. "Family? Expectation." That night, I got another call, this time from Dillard. "Helen, thought you should know," he said. "Your daughter's husband came by my office." "Oh?" "Said he's filing bankruptcy." I paused. "And my daughter? She's not on the documents. You made her sign off years ago when they bought that place. Smart move." I smiled. "That wasn't smart, Dillard. That was experience disguised as paperwork." Later, I poured myself a small glass of wine, red, quiet, reflective. I took it out to the porch and let the night air wrap around me like memory. You ever notice how betrayal don't echo the way laughter does? Laughter fills a house. Betrayal just rearranges the walls. I looked at the stars and said, "Lord, I ain't asking for justice no more. I just want balance." And the wind, that honest old southern wind, rustled the trees like it was saying, "Amen." By Sunday morning, she was on my porch again. No makeup, no jewelry, just tears and trembling. "Mama," she whispered, "he's leaving me." I didn't say a word. I just opened the door. She stepped inside, holding nothing but regret. The smell of coffee hit her, that same scent she grew up under. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. "Mama, how do you still have peace after everything?" I smiled slow. "Because peace don't depend on people, baby. It depends on truth." And I stopped lying to myself. We sat together in silence. Two women, same blood, different scars. She reached out, touched my hand. "Mama, I want to start over." I nodded. "Then start with honesty. It's the only seed that grows right." That night, after she went to bed in her old room, I wrote again in my journal. Forgiveness don't mean forgetting. It means remembering without bleeding. And sometimes the only way to save family is to let pride die first. The clock ticked midnight. The house felt alive again, not with noise, but with restoration. Still, deep down, I knew this story wasn't done, because every redemption comes with one last test, and I could feel mine coming, slow, certain, and holy. The next morning started too quiet again, but not empty quiet this time. It was expectant, like the air itself was waiting for something. The first sound was the kettle whistling, sharp as a warning. The second was my daughter's phone vibrating across the kitchen counter. She'd left it unlocked. I don't snoop, but sometimes truth walks right up and taps you on the shoulder. One new message from Derek. "If she won't sign the lease back, we'll file to force liquidation. It's the only way to get the cash." My chest went still. The woman who'd spent her life teaching morals had raised a man's puppet, but a puppet don't know who's holding the strings. I called Dillard right away. "Baby," I said, "if a man tries to pull wool over your eyes, what you do?" He chuckled. "You shear the sheep." "Good," I said. "I need some blades sharpened." Within 2 hours, he sent over a file. It had copies of recent legal filings, Derek's name all over them, full of half-truths and bold lies. He was trying to transfer the rental title into a shell company. My name was listed as deceased. Deceased. I looked at that word and smiled slow. Boy, you picked the wrong ghost. That evening, the sun hit low. Orange light slipping through blinds like molten gold. I stood there watching it crawl across the kitchen floor. When the phone rang again, I knew who it was before I answered. "Mama," she said, voice shaking. "Derek's been acting strange. He's talking about money in court. I don't understand any of it." "You will," I said. "Just be patient. Some lessons need witnesses." I spent that night preparing. Not for war, for revelation. War ends with pain. Revelation ends with peace. I pulled out the gray lockbox again. Inside, along with the deed and the check, was something I hadn't touched in years. My husband's old briefcase. Still smelled faintly of leather and tobacco. Inside, it was a folder labeled Living Trust, Helen Price. He drafted it just before he passed. Every asset, every parcel, every account, all listed under my name, with a clause I'd forgotten until now. In the event of any attempted fraud, the property reverts to charitable trust, and all assets of the claimant are subject to audit. Audit. Oh, Lord, that man had always known how to plant seeds of justice that bloom years later. Sunday came like thunder behind clouds. She was up early, nervous, restless. I told her to wear something decent. "We going somewhere?" she asked. "Just church, baby," I said, "but the Lord might have extra business today." She didn't know Dillard would be there too. Sitting in the third pew, folder in hand, ready to witness truth unfold in real time. Halfway through the sermon, my phone buzzed. Discreetly, one vibration. Dillard's text. "It's done. Filed at 10:42, trust reactivated, fraud nullified." I smiled, folded my hands, whispered a quiet, "Thank you, Jesus." When service ended, Derek was waiting outside, tie crooked, sweat on his forehead, eyes full of false confidence. "Mama Helen," he said, "we need to clear this up before the lawyers make it messy." "Too late," I said. "The Lord already filed first." He frowned. "What?" I pulled out the trust document and handed him a copy. "Your shell company just triggered a clause older than your marriage license. Congratulations. You just donated half your holdings to the St. Jude shelter for women." His jaw dropped. "You can't." "I didn't," I interrupted. "My husband did. He always said, God'll write the last paragraph if you let him." He took a step back. My daughter looked between us, eyes wide. "Mama, what does that mean?" "It means, baby," I said softly, "that sometimes love needs protection, even from blood." The drive home was silent except for the hum of her guilt. Halfway there, she reached over and touched my hand. "I didn't know he was doing all that, Mama, I swear." "I believe you," I said, "but believing ain't the same as forgetting." That night, I sat on the porch again. Same wine, same crickets, same peace. But this time, the stars felt closer, like the sky itself was listening. I whispered, "They wanted my silence. I gave them scripture. They wanted my house. I gave them humility. They wanted my weakness. I gave them a sermon." And somewhere deep in that still night, I could almost hear my husband laugh. That low, proud, knowing kind of laugh that says, "We did it, baby." The story wasn't done yet, because every truth brings a choice. Rebuild or repeat. And my daughter had one left to make. The next morning smelled like rain and repentance. The sky was the color of pew wood, gray, soaked in memory. I was in the kitchen frying eggs when I heard her door open. My daughter stood there, small again. "Mama," she said softly, "I called him last night. He said he's gone for good." I didn't look up. The skillet hissed, oil popping like punctuation. "You gonna eat?" I asked. "I can't." "You can," I said, sliding the eggs onto her plate. "You just forgot how to take care of yourself." She sat down, hands trembling, eyes swollen. "I don't know how to start over." "You start with honesty," I said, sitting across from her. "Tell me what you're really sorry for, not the surface, the roots." She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry for treating you like an obstacle instead of a home." Tears slid down her cheeks. I thought success meant separation. I thought love had to look modern, shiny, independent. I nodded. "Baby, independence don't mean disowning the people who taught you how to stand." Her voice broke. "I didn't even see what Derek was doing. I just wanted him to think I was smart, that I could handle money, handle power." "Power don't need proving," I said. "It needs purpose." The rain started tapping the window, soft at first, then steadier. It sounded like truth washing off the roof. I leaned back, folded my arms. "You thought you were saving me from the burden of ownership. But baby, I was never drowning. You were digging." She covered her face again. "I ruined everything." "No," I said. "You just gave me front row seats to your lesson, and I thank you for that." Around noon, the phone rang. It was Dillard again. He said the story had spread, quiet but quick. The shelter donation made the local paper. Headline read, "Elderly Woman's Legal Grace Saves Family Home and Funds Women's Shelter." I chuckled. Did they mention the fool who tried to fake my death? "No, ma'am," he said, laughing. "I left that part out. I figured the Lord would cover it in his own PR. When I hung up, my daughter looked up from her coffee. "What's funny?" "The world finally writing about me for something other than a casserole recipe." She smiled weakly. "People online are calling you the Magnolia Widow." I laughed so hard I had to hold my side. Lord, I've been called worse. By evening, the rain stopped. The air felt rinsed. We sat on the porch, watching water drip from the magnolia leaves. "Mama," she said, "what made you so strong?" I looked out across the yard. "That's the thing, baby. I ain't strong all the time. I just remember who I am when people forget." She nodded, quiet. "Strength ain't about yelling. It's about waiting. And when you wait long enough, the truth starts talking by itself." A car slowed in front of the house, black sedan, tinted windows. Derek. He didn't get out. Just sat there a minute, then drove off. My daughter's hands tightened around her mug. "I'm scared of him, Mama." "You should be scared of going back to who you were," I said, "not of a man who lost his leverage." She swallowed hard. "You think he'll try something?" I looked at her, calm as Sunday's morning. "Baby, he already did, and God already finished it." That night, I woke up to thunder. For a moment, I thought I heard footsteps on the porch, but when I looked out, nothing. Just rain again, hitting the tin roof like applause. Maybe heaven clapping for a lesson finally learned. The next day, she packed her things. Not to leave, to clear the clutter of her old life. We filled boxes with useless souvenirs of pretending. Photos where love looked borrowed. Clothes that smelled like someone else's approval. When we were done, she stood in the doorway, breathing deep. "This house feels lighter." "It should," I said. "It just exhaled years of lies." Before bed, she hugged me. Really hugged me. No guilt, no agenda, no competition. Just daughter to mother, truth to anchor. "I don't know if I'll ever make it up to you," she whispered. "You don't have to," I said. "Just don't repeat me. Evolve me." Later, I sat alone in my chair, watching the moon slide across the sky. The magnolia tree shimmered in the silver light, leaves slick and forgiving. I opened my journal and wrote, "Some storms don't destroy, they baptize. And sometimes losing everything is just how God clears your table to serve you peace." Then I added a line I hadn't written in a long time. Still standin', still lovin', still learnin'. I closed the book and smiled, because maybe forgiveness wasn't the end. Maybe it was the next chapter. It was Tuesday when I felt the shift. You ever wake up and just know the air's holding its breath? That's what it was. Like the world was waiting for something ugly to show its face. The morning started simple. Coffee, hymns, sunlight pouring through lace curtains. Then a soft knock at the door. Too polite to be trouble. Too early to be peace. When I opened it, there stood a county deputy and a man in a gray suit. "Mrs. Price?" the deputy asked. "Yes, sir." He nodded toward the man beside him. "This gentleman has a few questions about a complaint filed against your property." My daughter appeared behind me, eyes wide. "What kind of complaint?" The man in the suit smiled, fake and corporate. "Miss, this is just a misunderstanding about a—" Before he could finish, I saw the papers in his hand. The header read, "Notice of Civil Claim, Price v. Price Holdings, LLC, filed by Derek L. Turner." I chuckled, low and slow. "Ah," I said, "so the snake found another garden." I invited them in. Manners cost nothing. The deputy looked uncomfortable. The lawyer smug. My daughter stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Price, it seems there's confusion about ownership of this residence. Mr. Turner claims—" "Mr. Turner can claim the moon if he wants," I said, setting down my coffee. "But God still owns the sky." He smirked. "Ma'am, if you can't provide documentation." Before he could finish, I slid a folder across the table. Deed, trust clause, county stamp, signed, sealed, undisputed. He flipped through it, slower and slower, till his smirk started to die. "Is that recent?" he muttered. "As recent as your client's last lie," I said. The deputy coughed to hide his laugh. My daughter's hands trembled. "I thought this was over," she whispered. "Oh, it is," I said. "But see, when liars run out of words, they start filing paperwork." I turned back to the lawyer. "You tell your client 2 things. 1, I'm alive. 2, his fraud already funded a women's shelter, so every time a mother finds safety there, she'll whisper his name as a thank you prayer." The man swallowed, nodded, and left with his pride folded in his briefcase. The deputy tipped his hat before following. When the door closed, my daughter sank into a chair. "Mama, how do you stay so calm?" "Because the truth don't panic, baby. It just waits for noise to get tired." That night, thunder rolled again. Slow, heavy, righteous. Lightning flashed across the magnolia tree, turning its leaves silver for half a heartbeat. I thought about all the storms this house had seen. Births, funerals, laughter, betrayal, and now justice. Full circle, written in thunder. 2 days later, Dillard called. "Thought you'd like to know," he said. "Your son-in-law's company just got audited. Turns out the shell was more like Swiss cheese." I smiled, and here I was, worried karma forgot my address. He laughed. "You know, Helen, they might make a movie out of this one day." "Tell him to call it The House That Preached," I said, "'cause every brick here got a sermon in it." That Sunday, the church was packed. Word had spread about the shelter donation, about the case, the forgery, the victory without violence. Pastor Collins called me to the front. "Miss Helen," he said, "we've been teaching forgiveness for years. But today, you showed us what it looks like." The congregation stood. Applause rolled through the sanctuary like revival wind. I raised my hand, humbly. "I ain't a hero," I said. "Just a reminder that kindness with a backbone can move mountains." After service, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25, holding a baby on her hip. "Ma'am," she said, "I stayed at that shelter last year. They said your name's on the plaque now." I smiled and touched the baby's tiny hand. "Well," I said, "then that money already found its way home." That evening, my daughter joined me on the porch again. "Mama," she said, "when people talk about legacy, this is what they mean, huh?" I nodded. "Legacy ain't what you leave behind. It's what you teach before you go." She leaned against my shoulder. "I'm proud to be your daughter." "Good," I said, "'cause I fought hard to raise you into a woman who could survive herself." Later, when the stars came out, I opened my journal again. Truth don't shout, it outlasts. Every storm ends up testifying for the one who stayed still. They came for my house, but they left with a mirror. I closed it, exhaled, and smiled at the moon. Because justice, when it finally lands quiet, don't sound like thunder. It sounds like peace. But even peace has one last echo. A name in the dark. A memory knocking on wood. Because the next letter in that mailbox wouldn't come from a lawyer. It'd come from Derek himself. It was Thursday when the letter came. Plain envelope, no return address. But that handwriting was loud as thunder. My daughter brought it in, her hands shaking. "It's from him," she whispered. I could tell before she said it. Guilt has a scent, like cold metal and regret. "Put it on the table," I said. "Let's see what cowardice looks like in ink." She hesitated. "You sure, Mama?" I face death, divorce, and daylight bills. I can face a man with a pen. The paper crackled as I opened it. The smell of cheap cologne leaked out like a confession trying to cover itself. "Helen, you won." But it was never about the house. It was about control. I thought if I could own the land, I could own the story. Turns out you wrote it before I even showed up. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I was scared. Men like me don't build. We borrow. And we blame the hands that fed us when we choke on the debt. You're stronger than I ever wanted you to be. But you were right about one thing. The truth outlasts noise. If you ever see her smile again, that's your doing, not mine. Derek. My daughter's lip trembled as I handed her the page. She read it twice, then just sat there, quiet tears sliding down her jaw. "He actually said sorry," she whispered. "No, baby," I said softly. "He wrote sorry. Big difference. Writing don't fix a wound. It just marks where the knife went in." She folded the letter and pressed it to her chest. "What do I do with it?" "Keep it," I said. "Not for the pain, for the proof that people change when life finally holds a mirror." That night she couldn't sleep. I heard her pacing in the next room. Footsteps, then stillness, then footsteps again. At one point she whispered through the door, "Mama, you ever forgive someone who never earned it?" I looked up from my Bible. "Every day," I said, "'cause if I waited for folks to deserve it, I'd die bitter." The next morning, she burned the letter, right there in the sink, flame licking up the words like a sermon devouring sin. When the last ash curled into gray, she whispered, "Amen." I stood behind her. "You done?" She nodded. "I think so." "Good," I said. "Now you can start living instead of reliving." That afternoon, we drove to the shelter. The sign out front read St. Jude, Home for Women and Children, founded in honor of Helen Price. The director, a sweet woman named Rosalind, met us at the door. "Miss Helen," she said, "we used your donation to finish the nursery. Would you like to see it?" I smiled. "Lead the way." The room smelled like hope. Soft paint, baby powder, second chances. Tiny cribs lined the walls, laughter from the next room. My daughter stood there, eyes shining. "This," she whispered, "came from your pain." "No," I said. "It came from my patience." She looked at me. "You really believe people can change?" "Baby," I said, "I believe God don't waste a wound. Not one." When we got home, I walked out to the magnolia tree again. It was blooming heavier than ever, like it knew the ending before we did. I sat on the porch, rocked slow, and thought about everything that had happened. The house, the lies, the paper, the truth. And I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't a revenge story. It was a resurrection. I took out my journal, flipped to the last page, and wrote, "They wanted my silence, so I gave them a sermon. They wanted my house, but I gave them shelter. They wanted my defeat, but I gave them deliverance." Then, below that line, I signed it the same way I always do. This was Aunt Helen, still standin', still lovin', still learnin'. The porch light flickered, then steadied, gold against the deep blue night. Somewhere inside, my daughter hummed a gospel tune I hadn't heard since she was little. The same one her daddy used to hum when everything was right in the world. And for the first time in years, the house didn't just feel owned, it felt alive.